everything else is on your machine, so it's entirely free.
What if you don't have a Mac?
If you don't have a Mac, you do Llama. Llama, this one, so what do you have? Linux, Mac OS, Linux, Windows, right? And then you spin it up, and then if you look at the blog, or maybe they have so you do Llama one, and then Llama runs on your machine. So now the problem is your machine is not maybe powerful enough to run some models or not, right? An alternative is Gemini, right? So they do Gemini is free for cloud.google.com. If you go to Vertex.
Ok, je vais rechanger de deck là, coudonc, lui il marche pas. Je peux pas, ça dit can't modify deck.
They have a rate limit, but so I'd say Llama and LM Studio you run locally, and then if you want to do something with higher scale and not spend any money, you go to Vertex AI Model Garden, and I think they offer this. So I'm not familiar exactly with the docs, but look, the Llama 3.2 API service is at no cost during public review. And then they'll price it later. So most probably here you see I'll go, hey, write me a Python code counts 0 to 10. Right? This is free. So that could be a cool use case.
Yeah.
I guess the Llama stack, they have a lot of kind of like, I just discovered it, so I wanted to try it out. Right, so most probably there is a way to kind of spin it up on your machine, and then you would just call it from a function on Restack, and then you can do multi-step, and then all the inference is free. The Restack engine is on your machine, so you have zero cost. Right?
Thank you so much.
I'll put it on the Discord. So the question sent to PM. Ask them on the chat, guys. I know it's this one. This is Llama for LM Studio is a cool app for this. The equivalent for images too. So I don't know if you guys, or some of you want to do images or audio. Anybody wants to do something with audio? Yeah. So do you know VAPI? So VAPI is probably the fastest way to do audio during the weekend. Right, unless you have something a bit more advanced. Any questions? Any thoughts? Any?
Yeah, I got a question for trade. So like, it's gonna be able to trace every single detail, like every single the token level. Or just simply like an aspect.
What do you mean? Like you mean this? When you mean trace, you mean this? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
You can. So the input and output is you choose where in the code, and so you can return whatever you want.
Yeah. And also, is it possible to kind of change stuff over here so that I can test it instantly?
Yes. So for example, I would do what you're talking about is, let me like here, and then I want to do run in playground, which is basically just that function. And then instead of provide a summary, I say provide a funny story, and then you just run that, and then your workflows will pick it up in the background, and then you just test this, and then it will say, here's a funny story. So then you can play here. I mean, the alternative is you change it in the code, right? And then you can rerun the workflow itself. So you can do both. You can just rerun the entire workflow. You can also reset that step. So, for example, for audio, it's really cool because in audio, you would be like, you speak, right? And then there's 3 steps. And then you want to try it again. So you have to speak again to the thing, right? With this, not anymore, because then you can change your code on the second step. But the first step that is audio in, you just continue coding, right? So I'll say, hey, I'm Philip. And the next step is, translate it in French. And my prompt is wrong, or the way my code is wrong, right? And I don't want to talk again and again and again every time that I run the code, right? So with this, you just do reset a step, and the first step will have the binary or the base 64 of the audio, and then continue, right? Any other questions? So so this is like basically you do multi-step workflows, you can automate things. What we can also do is event streaming. So you can send events to the workflow. So we have the docs, you can look at real-time events. So another alternative from workflows is there is this deterministic workflows, which is step by step. And then there is non-deterministic, for example, a code center, then there is a code happening, and then you do function code, right? And then you don't know which one to do. Or you want a long running workflow, like these workflows can last months or years without using any of your compute. And you would ask feedback from people, like for example, you send an email, and then people will answer something, right? So you want to send back an event to the workflow. So that's super easy. With Restack, you define an event, and then in the workflow, you do an on event, and then from the event, you can trigger your function. And you let the workflow running unless a certain condition, for example, end the workflow, which is another event. So that allows to do human in the loop, feedbacks, things like that. So if you have a use case during the hackathon that would benefit from receiving events, I'll be happy to help. It's a bit more advanced. I have also quick start here. You can look at the ones that have feedback. So fast API and Gemini feedback works like that. So you would have a workflow that I would define an event, see, which is this demo was you get recommendation from the AI, right, every day, and then you want to give it feedback, and then out of your feedback every day, then it gets better over time, and they do better recommendation over time. So for that, you need to be able to receive event, like with event feedback, and then trigger, for example, take into account all the feedback, so that array of feedbacks get over time a bit bigger. And so you keep all the resiliency, your continuous code never goes down, you can go back up, you don't use any resources while you're waiting for any feedback. It can last weeks, months, or a year, no problem. You just put event, and then it will queue up. Even if people are on mobile and they lose their connection and send the event, it goes to the engine, waits, and then we'll pick it up, and then very resilient, it will continue. So usually when you you build these workflows, after a while you're like, oh, I would like to receive events or send events. So it's usually the next step. What else? Any of you want to try to fine-tune a model during the weekly? Okay, good.
But if
Yeah.
like a small language model, if we fine-tune that,
Yes.
is it possible to reduce the stack in that case?
Yes, so most people that use Restack, so to fine-tune a model, the main problem is the data set, right? Because there is a lot of like cloud API, Gemini or whatever, where you give the data and they will fine-tune the model. So usually what people do is they start with their workflows and they use a large language model. And then they get a certain amount of accuracy, they do eval, they check, do a bit of vibe check, or they write test, or they have an LLM evaluate if it's good or not. And then from this workflow data, they take this. For example, you would use, let's say, in that example, you use Llama 3.2, large language model, and you make a workflow that makes summaries of Hacker News project, right? You run that, you have a lot of them, and then you take into account feedback, and then your summary will get better, but through prompt engineering, right? Or through this feedback loop. And so over time, you will have data where the input is the Hacker News project, and the output is maybe 2 steps or 3 steps towards a really good summary. With this input and this output, you collect all of that, and then you go fine-tune a smaller Llama model. So you either do distillation, for example, or you do a base model with, on the parameters level, and then you get a bespoke model just to do a really good summaries of Hacker News, and it's much faster and it's more accurate, and this is what people do to be able to improve like latency and accuracy all the time. So during a hackathon, usually you don't have time to do that. But if you want to make a cool demo or like do something for tomorrow, I mean, I can help to try to see if we can have a bunch of data and then give it to a small model to fine tune. So depending also, there is a certain cost, right? Because you need to, the cost of fine tuning is with the cloud provider. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Think about it.
Usually you get already pretty good at having that feedback loop, right? So that you kind of teach the model to prompt itself, so that you don't prompt it, but actually it learns how to prompt itself all the time. And depends on what's the use case. Anybody has other questions? Anybody has an idea to ship during this hackathon and need feedback to see if they can win the hackathon? What's the chat saying? Is this not compatible with Windows? I keep the uname error. Oh, I don't know what's the uname error. What's the uname error? Oh, that's interesting. Import to OS, import. Is it on the environment? Anybody has a Windows machine and it didn't spin up? You have a Windows, right?
Yeah, but I haven't started it yet.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So maybe if you start it, maybe this is poetry run services. Cool. I'll take a look at Cache and Wolf. Like maybe I can
Okay.
see if you
So-
start it later in the day. Maybe I can see if I can debug on your machine.
This is for poetry, right?
Yeah, it seems that people have a problem when they do poetry run services on Windows. I don't have Windows, so I don't know. It's something I can fix.
Okay,
OS
I'll start.
name is what else? You guys mind if I take a selfie? Yeah. Thank you. If you want to start with Listener, if you have any issue, whatever, just pick me up. I'll be here all day long. I'll be hacking too. I'll be trying to use the Llama stack thing and make a repo, like if you want to run locally stuff, no problem. Yeah, and for the Windows people online, I'll follow up on Discord. I need to get to the bottom of it and see if there is a fix, and I'll just make a PR on the quick start repo and ping you if I can fix it. And then yeah.
So,
That's it.
I have a question.
Yes.
What is the event that we are talking about?
Could you write it in the message because I can't hear properly? You asked about events, right?
Yeah, correct. What is the event that we are trying to generate?
You're talking about my definition of real-time events, this thing, right?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So basically, for some logic, so for some type of like AI workflows, you would like to have, for example, if you want to continue the conversation with people, like if you make a chat, and then every time someone chat, then you would probably want to send an event to a workflow. So
Okay.
that's
Got it. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
right. So I have an example. If you go to examples, yeah. Let's see this one, human in the loop in JavaScript or in this one. Yeah, you're welcome. Let me see. So, yeah, it's actually this one.